Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Sharon.
How are you today?
It's been a good morning. It's a good morning. It's a good morning.
Awesome. I'm gonna have you officially introduce yourself before we jump in.
Okay. My name is Angela Harrelson, and I live in Minneapolis. I am George Floyd aunt. His mother is my sister.
And you are talk about how many siblings were in your family and
Oh
where
my goodness.
where
Oh,
you are in the pecking order.
I come from a family of 14. My mom did lose one shortly, a few months after birth. And there were 10 girls, and there were originally 4 boys. And we was all born and raised in North Carolina, a small town called Goldsboro, North Carolina. And my parents was pretty much sharecroppers all their life, most of their life. And later in the years, they tried to do the normal workforce a little bit. My mom never did, but my father tried that for a little bit to his death. But yeah, that's how we was born. And one of the girls is George Floyd's sister, and her name is Sissy. Name is Sissy.
Okay. One of the girls in um so one of the girls is George Floyd's sister. Say more about that.
It's Sissy. And
Okay.
Sissy's one of the older siblings and stuff. I think, yeah, one of the older siblings. Um, she pretty much took Perry when he was about like 5 years old, and they migrated to Houston. And Sissy, she often lived with us. Sissy, because Sissy spent most of her life as a single mom. She did get married, but it was a hard marriage. Things didn't work out. So she ended up raising Perry and the two girls, um, by herself. So often, she went to New York, when New York. And I believe at that time, she was married to him while she was in Perry's father, who he was named after, George Perry Floyd Sr. So
Got it.
that's where he gets the name from. But they always came to North Carolina because the father, Perry Sr., I just say Perry Sr.
Okay.
Father was from North Carolina as well. Everybody from North Carolina.
Got it.
And but they always came home. And when Sissy fell on short times, they always came home to live with us. Matter of fact, they almost all of the sisters always came home to live with us. And I'm thinking, for the life of me, have an outhouse here.
Right.
We live like in a shack, really bad house. They probably would condemn that house. They eventually did, but we somehow knew that if the health department came, they probably would condemn it. But that's all we knew. When that's all you do the best you can. And so, but when I got older, I realized that people didn't come back because it was a condemned house, or because they weren't thinking about the outhouse. It was the love and the family and the reunion and the good food and the cooking. That's what it was all about.
That's beautiful. And that comes through a lot in your book, which is amazing.
Oh,
Um,
thank
yeah. Thank you for putting it out and sharing your story with the world.
you.
Um, for people who will hear this, Angela is I think you're such a humble person. And I was blessed that when I was at George Floyd Plaza visiting the coffee shop, speaking with Billy Jones, Billy said, "Come on, you should meet Angela." And you and I talked, and you didn't mention the book, but it's very riveting. And my children are 8 and 11, and we've been reading it before bed. And then one of the things that they were really struck by was the story. You mentioned that one of the siblings didn't make it very long. And if I read the book correctly, and my memory is serving me correctly, it sounds like your parents had encountered a landowner that was very racist and maybe had a confrontation and had to leave with the baby and not,
Yeah, my
and
mother.
yeah, go ahead, tell about that.
I heard about that, even though I was nowhere near born at that time. This is like what's up in the upper elders
Yeah.
sibling. But my mother constantly told that story. But she told it from the point of, like any mother that lost a child, even though people say, oh, my mother got 13 kids left, it didn't really matter to her if she had 10 girls and 3 boys left. In her heart, she always grieved the loss of that child. And she would tell that all the eldest brothers and sisters heard the story. We heard the story. Dad told the story. But I can't. But I guess my father was a very, very rough man. He didn't really have a lot of patience for a lot of stuff, you know. And you have to think that my mother was born in 1925. So how they were raised up in the 20s and the 30s. Can you imagine that time period? And my father was much older. And I guess apparently, to make a long story short, apparently my father refused to work. I just think my mom think he just got fed up. He just got fed up with something. And I believe the man used the N word, call him a nigger, because he wouldn't work. And in those days, if you didn't work, you have to get out if you were sharecroppers, you know, and they didn't have time to do all of that. So my mom, you know, wrapped the baby up as warm as she could, and they had to walk. And I remember my mom telling me that they walked the babies. And I think, I'm not sure how far her parents lived, but she made it there with the baby and the rest of the little kids. And so, but unfortunately, the baby got sick. It wasn't strong enough to handle that. And my mom, she was only thinking that she had to get her to a warm, get Frank Jones was his name, Frank. And had to get Frankie to a warm place the best she can, because he didn't have no car, you know. And so the baby didn't make it.
How long was the walk, and how many children other than baby Frankie were with?
I'm trying to think, I'm thinking, I never did ask her that, but I'm thinking I should ask them that to make sure. There were probably maybe like 4 or 5 of them, I'm thinking, you know, at that time. So this is much older.
It was a big family.
It was a big family. But baby Frankie didn't make it. My mom said he was the most beautiful baby, but my mom said it with all the
Yeah.
but she remembered his long hair, and he had a very, very beautiful long piece of strand of hair that she always would like put on his forehead, because it was so long.
Oh.
And she said that baby, I remember she said he died right on my shoulder, Angela. She said she knew, she said the baby cried all night long, and all night long she put him on his shoulder. She tried to comfort the baby. What medicine they gave back in that time, they tried to give the baby. You know, who knows what they were trying to do. Right. But it was very devastating, but she blamed that man.
Yeah. And also racism and the structures of it are entrenched in your family. You said your great-grandfather was right?
Yeah. Yeah, my great-grandfather, my great-grandfather was born a slave. His name was Hillary Thomas Stewart Sr., you know, and his son, Hillary Thomas Jr., the junior is my mother's dad. So it'd be like my great-grandfather. And he got his free papers when he was 8 years old. And so all the information was passed along to the family to make sure we knew who we were and where we come from.
Tragic story, and beautiful that you're keeping the story alive. Sometimes people say the act of telling a story is an act of resistance.
It is, because you have to continue to tell the story, because sometimes I think white supremacy wants us to forget, or rewrite the story the way they want to see fit, to their benefit, you know. And so, you run across people. Matter of fact, I think I did most recently run across someone. She didn't know who I was, but she was saying that, you know, if you weren't, slavery's over, get over it. Slavery is over, get over it. And people don't realize, well, that has always been the problem, because when you say that, you don't want to even acknowledge it when they say that. And I heard that all the time, you know, that happened, it was over in 1865, get over it. But not realizing, well, we're still dealing with the consequences of slavery through structural and systemic racism. So when people often ask you to get over it, you're doing the best you can. You know, I have to work twice as hard. I can't walk in a store, in a jewelry store, and look around without somebody's on my back. You know, I have to be careful everything that I do. And they don't realize, or they don't care, that we're dealing with the consequences of it. And white supremacy is dealing with the benefits of slavery. And, and so it's made so, it's something that could have been prevented, that have people work so hard to keep people oppressed. And it takes a lot of work to do that.
Right. Yes.
I mean, honestly, to keep a certain people oppressed, and not just Black, but you got the Native Americans, immigrants and things like that, and when I say white, I'm not talking about all white people, I'm talking about the white supremacy.
Of course.
I just want to make that sure. And so, and I'm like, I say to myself sometimes, if they would have spent as much of that hard work working on unifying people, making it not just equal for all, if they could have took that much work for 400 years, do you know how better this country would be?
Absolutely.
I often think of that, sometimes I think about the 10 Commandments. You have a fit about the 10 Commandments. Why? I still have no idea. But if people will follow one of the 10 Commandments, like, for example, thou shalt not steal. If the world would just take one of those commandments and just follow it, it still would be a better place.
Right. Because we think about how even
yeah.
And even the thought of stealing and how it's defined, and if we think about how the whole money system works in the country, right? It's like
it still would be a better place, but people put so much energy trying to explain, why did this too religious to this, and they miss the whole point of God's love.
Yes. Well, I want to talk. So, here we are, Black History Month. We're on the cusp of Women's History Month.
Yes.
And so I want to talk a little bit about you. And also, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about who you've called Sissy, George Floyd's mother, and George Floyd's coming of age story, and the parts of him that we don't get to know. As I've read your book, how you're talking right now about systemic racism and systems of white supremacy. I think about that in many ways, but another type of oppression is like we see sexism and gender oppression. And it's kind of the water we swim in, and we don't even see it because it's so embedded sometimes. And one of the things you talked about is that while you are nursing, you take care of people and they can be very lovely. And then sometimes when they cross a threshold, it doesn't take long for them to maybe use a derogatory term or call a name. And I actually have found myself saying, oh, you know what? I witnessed something in the complex that I'm living in because I'm blessed to be in an affordable unit. And there's other folks who are in that situation. And in particular, one woman who has a disability, and she has she has been a smoker from the age of 13, and now she's in her 80s, and she can't smoke anymore. And she is miserable. And I saw her caretaker, a lovely African-American woman, sweet as pie, speaking, just having a friendly conversation. And then this woman was like, that woman she used the B word, and she's taking away my cigarettes, and she won't let me. And just watching sort of all the caretakers, by the way, tend to be women of color. There's a handful of white women as well, but they're women, and women of color often. And sometimes they have to encounter some really difficult things. And in your story, you also are a nurse and you work with people with chemical dependencies. So I wonder if you could tell me a little bit about how you got there. You started in this very sort of poverty-stricken house that was full of love, and then went into staff.
And at the end of a statistic, Well, you know what? I tell you, my mom had us 13 kids raising us. Her dream for us was just to get a high school diploma. She could not see college because that was too far out of her reach, but she could see high school because she never had a high school diploma. Neither of my parents did. I think they quit school around the 6th grade or something. I don't know, but that was their dream for us. But she was determined to make sure to the best that she could that we get that high school diploma. But but to see the determination and the willpower and the strength was passed along, those genetic internal traits were, I believe, passed along from her father, and then from her grandfather, who was my great grandfather, Hillary Thomas Stewart Sr., who was born as slaves. And I think when it comes to a lot of Black people, when you don't have anything else, you depend on a lot of faith, and a lot of us become spiritual, depend on God, higher power to get us through, and somehow that becomes our vision. And we could see this vision in our heart, our mind, and our soul, even though we don't have it. And we take that in here and we keep pushing through because we don't have a choice. And you know, and those values are what took me through. I got picked on, I got bullied, you know. Oftentimes I didn't have a lot of friends come over because of where I lived, and the shame of them and things like that happened. But you know, you learn to push through. And so I end up, one of my older sisters asked me to come live with her in Iowa to help. And so that started my journey. First time I ever rode a bus, you know, first time I ever saw a ticket. And, you know, I just took like a little suitcase with maybe 1 or 2 pair of clothes in it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I felt like Dorothy, you know, Father Yellow Brick Road. You know, I said, oh my goodness, I'm going. And mama was worried, but you know, I was so adventurous. I've always had a creative mind, and I was really, really, really smart. And she was really, really afraid to let me go, but she could see it in my eyes how much I wanted to go. And then my dreams that I would dream about on the swing, because if you read my book, the swing became my refuge for pain and stuff, and trying to figure things out. You know, we may not have a lot of money, I could always dream. And so when I got that chance to go on the Yellow Brick Road to Iowa, you know, so that's where I went. And that's where I just started. But then the fight just began. The fight, that's where the fight began, going through.
So you get to Iowa at what age? And then how do you end up going to college? So you are beyond
Yeah,
your mom's wildest dream, right? Because she was hoping that maybe you'd get a high school
I
diploma.
think I just turned either 19, I can't remember, you know, I graduated from high school, and I still work in tobacco fields because that's all I knew, you know, trying to find a part-time jobs and just getting turned down because I didn't have anything. We graduated, but my mama and my mama didn't have the skill to say, okay, you need to talk to a guidance counselor. I didn't know what to say. They had them in school, but you know, all I knew is to graduate. I didn't understand the whole process and the concept. And even though I had older sisters around that helped the best they could, a lot of them were gone by that time. I think I had maybe one. Yeah, my twin was there. I think my sister Sugar Doll was there, but she had her own struggles too. So me and my twin sister pretty much trying to struggle how to do things. And you know, that with my parents only, it's like when you get grown, you got to find your own way. That was the thing, you got to find it. So, I mean, in Iowa, like I said, that's when the fight would begin, because I'm coming to a state now. Nobody looks like me in Iowa. Like, okay,
Yeah,
I came from like a pretty much a predominant Black setting, been forced to integrate with white people, you know.
yeah.
And when I grew up, you talk to white people, but that's as far as it goes. When school was over, you didn't do more than no hanging out. And that was just a normal rule that we followed.
Right. And you mentioned in your book, your mom knew some white women and sometimes they were even friendly with her and then,
Oh yes.
but not in public.
Oh, I remember when she said, my mom considered that lady her best friend. They would, and I would see my mom leaning down the truck. They were talking, they were laughing, and I'm looking at this like, wow, you know. I'm like, because that's a confirmation to me that it's okay to laugh and talk with them, even though I rarely got that chance with them or anything like that living there. Honestly, you know, um, I don't remember, honestly, I don't remember having a relationship with a white girl. Only, laughing. But I remember my mama doing it, and it was like really, really good to see. But but my mama always knew her role in her place. She
Yeah.
always knew her role in her place. And her kids, the white woman kids that was married to the farm owner, the farmer, I remember seeing them in school, but and
Because in theory, you could have been playing together.
we could have been planning it, but we didn't. We worked in the fields together,
Okay.
but I always knew my role.
Right.
See, it was kind of like it wasn't talked about. But here's the thing: I met now. She's grown. She's close to my age, and it's so funny because we still when we see each other we have a lot of love because we both love each other parents. And she said she her name I don't want to say her name, but she told me that she loved my mother dearly because we witnessed this stuff, our mom and her hugging and talking and laughing, but we both, isn't that something how we both knew our roles in place. But I remember her telling me that story, but when she first went to college, one of her roommates was a Black girl, and her mother said, no, 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 you don't do that. She was shocked.
Right.
And she was so shocked that her mother would say that. And she said, when I saw you laughing and talking with Miss Laura,
Yeah.
Miss Laura, I saw you laughing and talking with Miss Laura. That's different. Isn't that something? And she told me that story.
Yeah. Yeah. Heartbreaking. And still it's changing, and the pace is slower, but it's not changing all that much, right? There's progress. There's one
It's
step forward,
progress.
one step back.
Well, and think about the whole thing, she dealt with it pretty good, but it's just amazing how secretly you have these roles.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say there has been progress, there's a lot of progress that's been made that people don't get to see and talk about.
Right. Well,
That's
and I
the
want to
thing.
make sure, because we have so many great things to talk about and so many stories kind of embedded. Can you kind of just guide me through what it looked like for you to go to college to get your nursing degree?
Well, like I said, that was well,
Part of a fight.
I didn't start well when I first went to Iowa. I was so excited, and her name was, I think, Melva, and she was trying to help me. And she said, these are, just go and apply. So I remember going to a school, I think it was Mercy. I know it was a nursing school, and I just so long, oh my goodness. And she told me that, that she wasn't interested in helping me. She didn't think my grades were good enough.
Oh,
And all I had was just my high school grades, and I thought they were pretty good. But she said, you haven't even taken algebra. You haven't even taken, I mean, she made it so I got discouraged.
the opposite of radical hospitality, right? It
Yeah,
sounds like.
and it's like she the thing, bottom line, she didn't want me in that nursing program. So I think I end up just what out. So I said, but I never gave up. I just kept trying. So I said, well, let me go and try to do a community college. Maybe I was trying to do the 4-year thing right away, and it didn't work. So I said, let me try to do the community college. I may not do nursing. Maybe I can be a lawyer. I'm always a dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there and I met a man, and this white man, I was really excited. And he said, I'm a racist.
Oh,
So I went to the counselor. They told me to talk to the counselors.
did you say that he told you that he was a racist?
Yeah, he actually just told
Oh,
me. He said, I'm
okay.
a racist. And he said, I don't teach Black people.
Oh my God.
No, he point blank just said it. And so I was pretty much kind of used to that openness, that upfront. And I accepted that more than I accepted a white lady that told me and played these games around with me and stuff, having me about, telling me to come down and like I got a chance. And then seeing when she saw who I wasn't good enough to be in the program. That's what that's what it's about. But he was point blank to the point and told me. And but I withdrew because, I was used to his type because the intimidation,
Mhm.
that's what I was used to. And that white male uh, farmer type or white supremacy, where they use intimidation towards you and
Mhm.
you feel this small to keep you in line, to keep you in place. You know what I'm saying? In other words, don't waste your time.
So you couldn't work with him, so you worked around him because you didn't stop?
I still didn't stop
Of
because
course
you
you
remember I'm a
didn't.
dreamer.
Yes, and you got perseverance. So what was the next?
Perseverance. I said, well, I may not be able to go to law school, but I can still take classes till I figure it out. So I started taking liberal arts classes. I said, well, I'm not going to major in something. Let me just do liberal arts. It's safer, that way. I'm not going to put down for nursing. I'm not going to put down for anything in law. I'm just going to take classes, And I took classes in theater and arts, which really was good to remind me to expand my mind, and then I started just, trying to do things and meeting people, and I ran into somebody this is early on, that was in the military. So you should try to join the National Guard. I said, oh, what's that? Oh, like the military. And I remember I had a sister and brother join the military and stuff. I said, okay. So I tried that and I passed a little test. I said, oh God, I got a chance. And this can help me go to college and help, because they told me all these things. And, I said, I got a chance. I got a chance. And that wasn't a way for me to do it. But the fight just began. There was another fight that just began.
Right. So ultimately, the National Guard is that where you get to complete your nursing program?
Yeah, well, I started in the military,
Uh-huh.
and then what they gave me the opportunity to, okay, hey, I can pay for some school, I
Okay.
can have those benefits, and I can do it because as long as I stay committed to the military training and stuff, which was really good because I got to expand and meet people. I got to go to boot camp, you know, and I didn't fear boot camp because I was raised up in a strict environment. So the military, that wasn't new to me, and having a white man yell at me wasn't new to me. You know what I'm saying? So I knew how to follow direction and complete it. What was hard for me was trying to, some of the things like weapons training was kind of hard for me, but I kept working on it till I did it right, because back then you take that rifle apart in 2 minutes and put it back together in 2 minutes. And you had to know every one of them. I just had to work hard. I would watch and I would listen, and I kept doing it over and over and over again.
And the thing that's striking to me about this is that you you weren't somebody who was dreaming of going into the military. You had a sense
No!
it was like you had to do it to find your round
I
in the
had to find a way because my parents were still living, but they never had any money. So I knew that no one was going to give me anything. And we didn't come from there. There was no rich uncle, there was no rich aunts. I had to fight. And I'm the first one in my family out of the 14 kids to even attempt college.
but not only attempt it, complete it.
Completed it. Yes, completed it. In the military, I wanted to be an officer. I said, oh my God, these people are going to be an officer. I said, I could try to do that. And that was another fight because I would go, and once I graduated from college, I went to apply for officer school, and I had to take another test, and I kept failing it. And I would cry, and I said, I know. I said, that hurt me because I knew I passed that test. I knew I passed that test. But they kept saying, well, you didn't pass.
Oh, wow.
Look here, you changed the answer. I said, yeah, I changed that answer because I knew it was the wrong answer because the last time the answer was that answer. So
Mhm,
I was getting confused.
mhm.
So that was the same answer I got wrong, but I answered. So, and I said, well, maybe I am doing something. It began to play with my mind, but I was so devastated. And then I had to come back and face my unit that I didn't make it through officer school. But I held my head up high, but later finding out that my test scores was changed. Someone told me that. And I said, well, at least I know it wasn't me.
Yeah,
And then, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the book or not, he was a major.
interesting.
He had a lot of, he came up to me and, and to this day, he said, you know what? I just want you to stop giving up on taking that officer test. He said, because you're never going to pass it. He said, this is not where you belong. So
And you,
and I knew it was him that,
mm,
that he had the power to do that. He was a major and he was behind that me not passing it. So, but I kept going. So for about like 12 years or 10, well, I waited and waited about like 11 years. So I tried the officer thing again. But I'm gonna tell you how the Lord blessed you. So when I did finally become an officer, it was in the Air Force. And I didn't start off as a second lieutenant. I started off as a first lieutenant. And then in 6 months, they gave me captain.
wow.
So it's like, and usually it takes about, sometimes it can take people 6 to 8 years to make that rank, maybe longer.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that the hard work that I paid off and kept trying, God was always watching over me and said, you know, that's okay. Because when you're ready, it will be easy for you and I will bless you either. I will make up for that. And he did.
And look where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, never thought I would be an author. That's for sure. I mean, I dream of writing, but not on this level.
Yeah. So ultimately, you, gosh, our time is going so fast. I could use
I know it goes
two or
so
3 hours.
fast.
No, it's so interesting because you have such a rich story too. And so ultimately we'll get you to Minneapolis because that's where, that's where we all came to know your nephew in the very last minutes of his life. And I want you to help us shine a light on the rest of his life. How do
Yeah.
you end up in Minneapolis and how does he end up in Minneapolis?
Well, I was in Minneapolis first. I
Yes,
always
you were.
tell people that I came in 1998. And so, well, you know, the military, you know, that's when I came here for the military because I wanted to, they had a slot that I wanted to fill. It was in the Navy Reserve. And so let me go there because I was supposed to take a slot as an officer, but the recruiter messed up and said, well, you know what? You can always try something else to be an officer. You know what I'm saying? I said, but no, you told me if I took this slot that I would get my rank as an officer. So basically they lied. But guess what? I was stuck in the military, in the Navy.
Oh
So,
gosh.
you know, we said, so, you know, you have a contract. So, but another door opened where the Air Force opened and they took me and said, you know what, we give you because you're a registered nurse, you get a direct commission.
Great.
And all I had to do was go to officer training for 2 weeks. See, that's how the Lord, people don't know this how it worked. Because all I'm going through trying to get ahead and, you know, and so that was the reason why I went there and you know, and continue my nursing career. And every year going to family reunions and not in Houston, Texas with my sister. Had a sister named Doll Baby. She lived in Houston. Perry was in Houston. Sissy was still his. That was the Houston family. So
Yeah.
every year we went to the Thanksgiving dinner. We see everybody. It was nice. You know, there were times when deaths we went there for a funeral. And so you know, throughout all those years and stuff, me and Sissy were like tight. She my buddy, you know. Sissy was buddy with me, but she was buddy with all the sister. But
And
we
is Sissy the oldest of your sisters?
no, she's not the oldest of the
Oh,
sisters.
okay.
Probably like down maybe, oh Lord, maybe the fifth. What? I hate getting
There's a
there.
lot to keep track of.
I
Big
know because our
family.
older sisters get mad at me. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
she was a fifth or sixth around that line, you know. But we were tired. We talked, me and Sissy talked almost every day. I helped her a lot with her family, sending them money, trying to help her stuff with her kids and stuff. Because she had a handful, you know.
So tell me about, yeah, let's talk about her. Let's talk about George Floyd's mother, or Perry's mother, and kind of what her life looked like. What were the struggles that, she was navigating? You mentioned she was a single mom.
Single mom, and Sissy just had a stroke of bad luck. It just seemed like one thing after another. But what happened, she dealt with children that fell into challenges with sobriety. Her oldest child fell to victim to sobriety. She got hooked on crack a lot. Hooked on
Okay.
crack, that substance. So did her second child. So she had 3 kids that she was dealing with it. And so her oldest child had a lot of children. And her
Okay.
children were, I don't like calling them, I don't want to, a lot of people get mad and call them crack babies, but I don't like label them. But
And
but she was taking drugs while she had these children.
got it.
And my sister was determined to raise those kids.
Mm.
She had like 6 of them. Plus she had her own. And plus she had her son, Perry. And
And oh, sorry. And did Perry's father struggle, did you say in the book, with
with
substance?
addiction too,
Okay.
and yeah. And
Okay.
so because she had these grandkids, trying to take care of all these kids, dealing with a daughter with that was it was hard for her to get ahead because my sister did not had the power and the strength to say no because she didn't understand it. She didn't understand what she was in a family disease. She had no insight to that whatsoever. She just knew she had to rescue her grandkids. She didn't have the strength to rescue her daughter, but God, mind, she gonna rescue her grandkids so they could be somebody. And she
Mm-hmm.
did a phenomenal job with most of them. She did. She did the therapy, she did the treatment, and a lot of them ace. But her, and so she just had a lot of obstacles to climb through. And Sissy, she ended up staying in the projects in Houston as she aged and got older. And she became the granny of the projects. Now she's dealing, now she's dealt with a lot of people that she babysitted for. A lot of them probably took advantage of her kindness and weakness, but she became known to someone who had a really kind and good heart.
And where does Perry come in the pecking order of her children? Where does he, how many siblings does he have altogether? And kind of
Yes,
what is
that's
his kind of childhood? 5?
right. But the first 3 was the one that I knew well, which
Okay.
was Jaja and Tanya, who Tanya called me last night. And George forces Latanya, called me last night, and I love you. I'm saying, okay, Tanya, I love you too,
Nice.
And then Jaja. They're the first 3 that we all knew. And those are the ones that we were very close to, that the family knew, that sing together. Matter of fact, George Floyd's sister Latanya lived with us her teenage years. She practically grew up and lived with us, and Perry was the youngest of the 3 at the time.
Okay.
And that's when I first met Perry, when she brought him home for Mama to see and to meet. He was about like 5 years old. And that's when we got to know Perry.
Okay. Who was the 5-year-old Perry that you got to know?
About the 5-year-old Perry, remember, I'm 12 years older than him. So I'm looking at, well, who is this little boy? I'm a teenager. I'm trying to learn how to be a cheerleader. I'm trying to learn the dance routines. But then this 5-year-old boy is running around, running around. I'm trying to figure him out, and he's trying to figure us out. Like, who are we? Well, he was so playful. And he looked like to me, he looked like my favorite TV show, Flip Wilson. And Flip was always talking about that. Cause he really, really did back in that day, you know. And we used to like tease him, put a mop on your head and do that saying, "What you see is what you get." You know, Flip Wilson used to say that, but a lot of people don't remember it. But my
Mhm.
mother, this is my sister said, "No, you know, he don't look like Flip Wilson. Don't do that, you know." But he was a quiet kid, but he was a humble kid. Because here we are, we're still using an outhouse. We still have the old broken down house. But Perry didn't think nothing about it. He'll stand on that little tree stump that we've had and try to help him pump that little water. You know what I'm saying? You know, use little muscles to pump the water. He ran around and played. He didn't think nothing about it. Stop. And I look back and I'm like, wow. And look, you know, and when he came to Minneapolis, it was May 17th, 2017.
Okay.
He came in May, but May 17th, 2017, when I first got my first telephone call for him, because I checked my text at my Facebook, and I was reading some of the text messages, and something tell me, when was the first time that you talked? It was May 17th, 2017.
Wow. And by then, he had already had some of his own struggles with
Oh yes, I kind of like jumped
addiction.
ahead of the game, but you know, like I had to tell this story about my sister, her heart struggle. She
Yeah.
did have health problems with her heart, you know, and I think everything with the stress took a toll on her, you
Mhm.
know. And Perry, he was great in sports. He had opportunities to excel, and I think because of my sister and the struggle, that was hard for him to see, to think about dreaming again. See, where I was dreaming again and pushing through, I just kept chipping off the block, kept doing it, you know. And I had my father around and both my parents around, you know, thinking different. And my mother wasn't in, even though we were broken poor, it wasn't a drug infested environment. Or
Mhm.
it wasn't, you know, we didn't have those obstacles like that.
Right.
It was total, you know what I'm saying? We were
Right.
poverty, but we knew that we could not steal. We knew that we, you know what I'm saying? So well, with Perry, his situation was different, no father around. And he had these dreams. And my sister lived, still living in this broke down project neighborhoods, you know, and he wanted to help her. So he would go back and forth to help her. And I think what it was, and I can't prove this and stuff, and I'm just going by what some of the stuff my sister said because she knows her child better than I do.
Of
You know,
course.
I think he wanted to make fast money, is
Mhm.
how he got involved with drugs. I don't think he meant to get addicted to drugs. I don't think he even fathomed going to prison. I just think he was trying to start it off making quick money. Hey, this is the quick money I can make, take care of my sister, and try to hop back to college. But what ended up happening, he ended up getting caught.
Mhm.
You're gonna get caught when you don't have that street mentality. It wasn't in him.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So he was trying to do stuff. He was doing the wrong things for the right reasons.
Mhm. I
You
mean,
know,
even when you talk about your own struggle to get where you are, you're talking like I lost track of the number of years, but it's like a decades long struggle
it was
to
it was
get.
like yeah, it was like a 10 year. He stayed and he spiraled for a long time. And a lot of I think came from self reflection. Going to prison. You know, being that devastating of his mom seeing him that way.
So when did he experience incarceration?
I want to say it was either in the was it 2000? Did he get out in 2010? I can't remember. I think he might have did. I can't remember 10.
But around then.
I think around then. I better double check that. I don't
Okay.
because I don't hate to give the wrong information.
But
But he
at
was
some point he'd been incarcerated and
he
he had
was
struggled with addiction and he comes to Minneapolis kind of hoping to start a new life and
yeah,
work
he
in
did.
sobriety.
Right. And what would happen, he had met a pastor or somebody from Minnesota that was connected with some type of pastor in Houston. So when Perry got out of prison, he started doing a lot of outreach work, is what my sister was telling me, what I've heard. And he would like work with pastors, work with the community. It was still in him to help. He was all about community. He was like a ghetto superstar, you know. But now, because he had prison, now he has street cred.
Mhm.
You know, but it wasn't in him to do all that stuff. It just wasn't, you know, because he wasn't raised that way. He truly wasn't, and it was not in him. And I think the pastors and things could see that. They could see that in him. And he joined church with my sister. Him and my sister was in a wheelchair, and they went to church together. And they joined church together. And my sister was so happy and so excited. And so she told him that I was here. So he knew I was here because we called, you know, he called me. But see, but I didn't know he was coming.
Mhm.
So my sister didn't tell me he was here yet. She called me and said, you know, Perry's here. I said, Perry, are you sure? Oh, when does that happen? And I was so excited. Oh, I was like a kid in the candy store because it was for the first time I've had a close relative to me. You know, that was a close relative to me, not a distant relative, a distant cousin or somebody, but someone that was my sister's or my sisters and brothers'
Your
children.
nephew, yeah.
And I felt so happy. And when I got the first phone call, I said, yes, Perry. And you know what he told me? He said, Auntie, I remember you doing cheerleader practice. I said, what? I didn't know that at the time because, you know, when he was growing up, I'm thinking, who is this little boy? I don't want you. We cheerleader practice. I don't really have time for him. You know what I'm saying? That 16-year-old mentality. But little did I know he was watching me do my cheerleader practices. I said, you were? He said, yeah. He said, you were good. I said, I had no idea. He said, no. He said, I used to love to watch you guys practice and practice. He said, y'all will, you know, do the cartwheels. And he said, y'all did really good. He said, I will watch you guys. And I'm like, okay. I had no idea what watching student cheerleader practices. I was just tickled by that.
That's sweet. And he had been an athlete and a good athlete,
He
right?
was
And
he was a top of the line.
tell me about the sports he played.
Football and basketball.
Mm-hmm.
He could have been an all-star, you know. You know, Perry, you know, I think in second grade, he wanted to be a Supreme Court judge. He was a big dreamer too.
So what if he'd had, you know, somebody, you know, you have an incredible of in like this internal light and drive that it's a gift and this deep, deep sense of resiliency. And you yourself had to go through so much work to get to where you are. What if somebody like Perry, who we all know, the outside world knows as George Floyd, what if he'd had an amazing guidance counselor or a teacher at school who said,
Oh
you know
my,
what? I see you. You're going to make it. How might his path have been different?
I think it would have turned him around a lot because the only thing that he was missing was that consistent male mentor in his life, like someone he can say, hey, stick with me uh, throughout, thick and thin, ride or die. You know, yeah, you have your buddies, your close friends, but do you have someone that is going to look out for your best interest and say, you know what, you're heading the wrong way. Let's steer. Everybody needs that. Sometimes, especially men, because even though I'm his aunt, I could never teach him how to be a man. That's something I could never teach him how to do. And Perry always knew um, in the back of his mind that his father was living. And, you know, and he knew that we call his father Perry too. And so that's why he wanted to be George. He didn't want to be called Perry. He wanted to be called George around certain people. He didn't mind the family, you know. And I think that messed with him about the father. I remember when he first met his father as a teenager. And we were all sitting in the car. Perry came to see for a concert. It was a concert that my mother played at church. Beautiful music. Sissy was in the car, Perry's in the car, Mama's in the car. I forgot who was driving the car. And this man walked up and it was Perry Sr. And he knocked on the window, but Perry Jr. didn't know who he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he said hi to Sissy, and I'm sitting there like quiet, like I did a little hi, but I didn't know what to do. And he looked at Perry, he said, I'm your father. And my heart just dropped. And Perry looked at him. He didn't say nothing.
How old was he at that time?
He was a teenager. He didn't say anything.
Did he ever talk to you about that?
No, but I want to talk to him about that because that was a missed opportunity, not for Perry, because it was a missed opportunity for him, but it wasn't his fault because he didn't know, he wasn't prepared for that because his father hadn't been around that much. But gosh, it was a missed opportunity for his dad to say, you know what, I love you, let's take it here. But
Yeah.
when you aren't taught these skills and you don't have it in your life, it's hard.
Yeah.
But I wish that it could have got to that level where I could have talked about his dad, or even his uncles could have went there with him.
Is his dad still alive today?
No, he died before his mom did.
Okay.
He had an aneurysm.
Okay.
But you're talking about somebody that could sing. Oh my goodness, that was a talented man. He was a musical genius, is what he was.
Wow.
Spent a lot of time on the road, rock and rolling, music, drugs. Unfortunately, drugs go along with it.
Yeah.
But he was a musical genius. He played with some of the best. They say he played with B.B. King, Stacey Lather. What is Stacey Lather? I'm not sure. I better.
But he played with some really amazing people.
Amazing people, background musician, incredible.
So George Perry Floyd, when he comes to Minneapolis, he's trying to kind of get his feet on the ground. He's made some connections with pastors. You say, I'm here for you. You focus on your sobriety. We'll be in touch when we can, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, we sure. I mean, the thing is, we talk, we FaceTime, and all this stuff, and we were always making all these plans. I said, Perry, you know what? You're working 3 jobs. Why don't you come work with me at the hospital? He said, I'm going to do that, Auntie. He said, I got to do this. I said, you run around too much.
And what were his 3 jobs?
I see. He worked at the Salvation Army. He worked at the was a restaurant.
Was he a bouncer?
A concave. It was security, a bouncer, and there was one more place he was working at. And I thought it was too much because he had his own place to live at. He had a roommate, own place to live at. He worked second shift. One of them was second shift, and then he had to be the day program, and then he went to church every Sunday.
And he had gotten a hold of his sobriety for a chunk of time while he was there. Is that right?
Yes, he really truly was. And I mean, he was proud. He talked straight. He talked sober. He was in and out. He was straight. My brother came up from South Dakota. South Dakota. I said, Perry's here. He would go visit Perry from South Dakota. Another family member was so excited. He went to go visit him. Perry worked out all the time. Stamina, fit, like really, really fit. 6'7", muscular, fit. And to speed stuff up forwards, my sister, I got a call. My sister was really sick. And she was put on almost a year later, close to a year on hospice.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm like, oh my God. So I said, Lord, I didn't realize how sick she was, but her heart was failing it. And it got to the point where she said, well, have you told Perry yet? She said, no. I said, what do you want him to do? She said, I don't want him to come back.
Yeah. I
said, oh Lord. I said, that's something you need to tell him. So I called Perry and I said, well, Perry, your sister's sick. I said, your mom is sick. I'm sorry. I said, your mom is sick. She said, well, does she want me to come home? I said, won't you call her? Because, I'd rather for him to hear that from her. Because And so he called her and she told him, I want you to stay where you are. He was kind of hurt by it because he wanted me to come. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because he wanted to be there, the oldest son. But I knew her reasons.
His sobriety, correct?
That was more. See how mother's love is? It was more important for her to see him sober and knowing, I want to cry sometimes, trying not to cry, and knowing that he was doing something good. She wanted an image, not in her mind, but in her heart before she passed.
Yeah.
Because she said, I just want to see him in a good place before I live. That was the message.
And then she passed away when?
She passed alone when she passed away. Lord have mercy. She passed away about 2 years before he was killed. So
Okay.
I think about, like, was it 2015?
Could it be 19 or 18 or something?
But what? Yes, Perry I get 20. Yes, 2008. Never right. You're right. I'm thinking I got kind of sidetracked. But go, Perry was killed 2020, so I think around 2018. Yes,
Okay.
and
And
so
yeah, go ahead.
it was just really hard because I talk to Cece every day. It was really hard losing her, but I know it was harder for him. And I remember telling Perry that she passed away, and because I wanted us to go together, but he said, "No, I'm gonna drive. I'm gonna drive." I said, "Don't drive." And he said, "Well, then I have someone drive with you." I said, "Well, I can't drive because I have to be back to work, so I have to get there fast." But I said, "I'll meet you there." So we did. And when I saw him, he had lost a lot of weight over there.
Mm.
And I believe he was a relapse, but I didn't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
My intuition and my experience
Yeah.
was telling me differently. And I remember hugging Perry. He was so glad to see me. And we was just hugging. I said, "I'm so glad that you're here." And I told him it's going to be all right. But I looked at his eyes and it wasn't the same. That spirit wasn't there.
Yeah. So he'd relapsed by then.
I think so.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. And one other piece of his story that I forgot to shine a light on, or that I wanted to clarify with you, I think it was maybe a friend or possibly a significant other of his who had done an interview at some point and said he had a dream of having a restaurant or something where incarcerated people,
Mm.
formerly incarcerated people would work. Was that a thing that you knew about?
No, I knew that he wanted to have his own church one day.
Oh,
He
interesting.
told me about it. But he was really into um, his spiritual, and he believed in God. And there was one time um, and I wish I could remember that video, but during the arrest of Derek Chauvin, there was just so many videos shown.
Mm-hmm.
And so many videos you guys got to see, some you didn't see. But there was one video that someone showed me, and I wish I knew, I wish I'd have kept that video, where he was telling them, someone, "I am a man of God." And he confessed that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when he did that, I think God heard his prayer from heaven.
Wow.
And I think because the way he said that, there was so much pain, but he wanted them to know who I am, who I represent. And I think because of that, he stood in his faith, even though he's in pain, even though I felt like I was going to die, even though this is going on, I'm a man of God.
Yeah.
And he heard his prayer for heaven. And that's how the world was able to change.
Yes. So we'll get to that part. I promise I'll try to free you up can you give me 15 minutes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. So just really quickly in the timeline, you mentioned that you meet him in Texas. Is that before your sister passes away? Did he get to see his mom one last time before she died?
No,
It was after.
it was afterwards.
Okay.
It was afterwards.
Okay. So, That's hard stuff. And I was thinking as you're sharing this, it kind of comes full circle. So he doesn't get to see her. And then in his last minutes of life, as he's trying desperately to fight for air, he's calling for his mama. And how does that impact you?
Um, when he said that he didn't get to see his mother when she was really, I mean, he saw her a lot, but I'm saying the time he wanted to see her before she passed, learning that she wasn't doing that well. She didn't want him to see him. This is what I think. She wanted to see him is doing good. She, in her mind, that you're somewhere, you're not here, where people can pull you back. That was important to her. But I also think when he yelled out for mama, he saw her. He had a chance to see her. And she just said, come.
And now they're together.
And now they're together. We couldn't see it, but he could. They could see each other. And I believe that.
I believe it too.
I believe that.
Powerful and tragic. And then there's this little bit of like in the midst of this tragedy that I can see this like another way of looking at it, which is what we have to hold on to, I think, to cope.
Yeah,
Right?
we hold on to, I think about, I never met my great grandfather, Henry Thomas Stewart Sr. And he was raised up in a time where he was born a slave, and he accumulated, by the time he was 21, he had accumulated over 500 acres of land.
Wow.
We lost all of that.
Oh.
Because he was uneducated. They say the white supremacy stole it from him. He didn't educate it. He didn't know how to read and write, but he knew how to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, we tried to get some of the land back, but wasn't able to do that. But I do feel that up in heaven, my great grandfather there did the best he could. He passed his traits down to the family. And when he's up there with Perry,
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's together up there now.
everybody's together. And he said, and I'm thinking, he said, you did it. He said, you opened that door, you did it.
Wow. Yeah. So bring us to now. So in May 2020, we all watched a public lynching of your nephew, unfortunately. And I was in Minneapolis in November 2022. And in December 2022, it was very cold and people are out there. Nobody's forgetting. His face is everywhere, not only in Minnesota, but everywhere. And there's this narrative in places like the Bay Area where like, oh, people in Minnesota are nice, but they're not activists. But I can tell you that's not true. And you could tell us that. So tell us, yeah, what's happening there? What's going to happen with the George Floyd Global Memorial? And how do we keep his legacy alive? How are you going to continue doing your work?
Well, we keep, we put it, we keep it in people's faces, that, they cannot deny us. Denial is not even part of the process anymore. We always want the awareness and the validation that, hey, this stuff is real and it is happening. And we will not forget, and we won't let you forget. So we still hold space out there in the George Floyd Square. They have activists there. They have meetings twice a day. They keep the spirit alive. We do events out there. They still hold community organizations. Everyone, that space is now sacred, and they keep it sacred. And we do community pilgrimage. We do pilgrimage for people all around the world. Pilgrimage is like taking another word for tour, but they say pilgrimage to keep it safe. We do exhibitions, and we take some because George Floyd Memorial is an art institute. What we did over the last 3 years, we have accumulated over 5,000 pieces of artwork from around the world that people laid to rest in honor of George Floyd. From pictures, from paintings, to writings, to poems, to songs, the records, to anything people want to do to lay. And so we work with archivists, people who specialize in preservations, to show us how to do that. And they volunteer their time and to help us with that. And so we're able to do exhibitions now for people and businesses wants to come out and do them, which help keep the name alive. And people are very excited about it. Now we have a current exhibition at the Health Partners Hospital here that we've done it at Orchestra Hall, we've done it at businesses, and we hope to expand that through our journey. We hire internships to help us do archivists. We call them archivists. They help us with that. We're now doing open up for showing people how to do entrepreneurship that we have joined with. I think it's an organization called Hope, and they're going to be helping us with set up entrepreneur, how to do that, what to do, how to fill out LLC, all things like that. We're doing that. We do Rise and Remember, which is a huge event that we do every single year. 8,000 to 10,000 people show up. We offer live music and food to the community. We have a great time. National artists come and help us out. This year we're at a conference, and this is our second year gala that's going to be the place of which the gala is going to be taking place at Paisley Park.
On the date of it?
Yeah, May 26th is the gala. May 25th is the kind of like vigil, and May 27th is a huge festival.
I want to come. I'm going to do my very best. I think
so cool. So Paisley Park was so kind to help us get things for the gala. People are really excited about that.
And so as we've been talking, we're talking about how deeply embedded, white supremacy is, and racism, and all of these things. And there's multiple tiers that we can see. We're seeing, as you've said, the way in which people are labeled when they're struggling with addiction, depending on their racial identity. It could be from addict with an illness to criminal. So what do we need to change so that structurally around that narrative, and how do we get to a place where police are no longer killing Black and brown people?
Oh my goodness.
Do you have it figured out, Angela?
Do I have it? You know what? The whole thing is that is happening. You're talking about a 400-year system that people work really, really hard at keeping in place. So, but here's the good thing about it. Change is here. There are people that are working diligently every single day, white, Black, around the clock, sacrificing their time, sometimes their life. And it doesn't look like it's here overnight, but the change is here, and that's what I'm excited about. It feels good to go to a place and see diversity. Someone look like me. It feels so good to see these kids playing with all types of people. There are so many times I had to walk in the classroom and I'd be the only Black person. Very rarely do a white child walk in and be the only white person in the Black school.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But we're expected to accept that. They will never, they accepted it. You see what I'm saying? And so, but it's so good to see this diversity happening. It's like, wow, this is what God wants. We're all God's children. So yes, sometimes it seems like we're going 2 steps backwards when we see more police killings. But I always try to tell people, we are seeing a lot now because of the cameras and the videos. What about all the killings that had taken place when there was not cameras and videos? What we are seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. There are screaming graves and people yelling, blood on people's hands that we would never know about.
Yeah.
But what we see now, we are speaking for those people that can't speak for themselves. So it is happening. And the most important thing that people need to know that we are going forward. Laws are being changed. Laws are happening. This is exciting. And I have to say this because otherwise people don't think change is here. It is here. There are laws that have been changed to help us. No, we still waiting for the George Floyd Policing Act, but I believe it's going to happen. I'm a dreamer. I never stop dreaming. The vision is what gives me a hope. Hope with a plan is what we have. Hope with a plan now. We just don't have hope. There's hope with a plan that our people are working. And my dream is one day is that I don't have to hold a sign that says Black Lives Matter. This is what not this movement. The movement is not about that 50 years from now, we're still holding a sign that says Black Lives Matter. When we don't have to hold a sign that says Black Lives Matter, that's, Sharon, when we know that we have arrived.
That's beautiful. And I was talking with Wanda Johnson, the mother of Oscar Grant, who was killed in 2009 by the BART police officers and by
Yeah.
a BART police officer. And in that case, the officer ended up serving 11 months. And then I was talking with her after your nephew was killed. And she talked about kind of the blue line and how much needs to be changed. Many of the things that you're talking about as well. And I think, and then, you know, for her, in some ways, it felt like a defeat because the officer only got 11 months. But I think in some way, it's like a step. It's like a measure of justice, right? And so it's like to go from that to the level of a consequence that Derek Chauvin got. Yeah, it feels like something is shifting a little bit.
Well, it's accountability. You know, we never had complete justice. I don't think anyone will, because we can't bring any of our loved ones back. But what we can have is accountability that's happening. Sometimes accountability, like, oh, you only got 11 months. We all know that is not okay. We know if we're switched around, a Black person most likely to be life. There was one judge that got it right, Ahmaud Arbery.
Yeah.
Judge didn't play. That judge didn't play. They ran that boy down like when I talk about my book, like the runaway slave mentality, that is a perfect example of the runaway slave mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the police origin started at slave patrols. Slave patrol didn't come about to arrest white people. Slave patrol was about Black people, dead or alive, catch them and bring them back. Because they were so upset about Black people wanting to be free.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that judge, I gotta hand it to him. He gave life without parole.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
He did not play because he saw the step-by-step agony. That boy ran for his life. It was a simple jogging, innocent, that turned in someone jogging for their life. And it was so preventable.
Yeah.
That's why I tell people, if you see people as a human being with humanity, you will always make the right decision. And it's never, people say it's a tough, no, it's never a tough decision. It's only a tough decision when you're thinking about what's going to happen to me. Am I going to lose my job? Are they not going to accept me? If you do what's right, it's always going to be right.
Yes.
Your character will outlive you.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I think one thing I want people like to take from you, and one thing that is being underscored in my conversation with you, is just we are tested with obstacles all the time. You know,
Yes.
you and I have been texting back and forth. I told you, Angela, I went on a field trip with my 5th grade daughter, and one of the classmates was freaking out because she saw a homeless person, which, by the way, homeless people are everywhere, or unhoused people.
Mhm.
And so I had tried to have this little conversation, and then it made me reach out to the teacher and say, "Hey, Mr. Mo, can you get the kids to read this book?" And he said, "Maybe. I have to think about whether or not it's age appropriate." And I said, "I think it is. My kids are reading it with me at night and asking really good questions." But then the obstacle kind of in the challenge and dealing with parent perceptions and that kind of thing, then I reached out to an artist friend and I'm like, what if we wrote a children's book so that that's our way to work around it? And what if this obstacle is just, you know, it's here so that we find another opportunity and a blessing and a way to spread the word and like the message in another positive way. And I feel like that seems like something that you do. When a door closes, a window opens.
Yeah, that's actually I was asked to, it's interesting you say that because they're trying to get me to do a children's book, you know. So I thought about that. I said, because you know, we were all children, but my perspective would come from, because I want kids, they don't dream again. They don't have that freedom that they feel. That swing, and I already got a title for it, that swing that I would use in my siblings, if I did a children's book, was my refuge.
Yeah.
And it was a swing that my father built. It didn't come from Walmart. It didn't come from no store. He built it with a tire and some chain. And you know that thing never broke. And I would swing and swing and swing. If I get picked on and laughed at and everything, you know, I get on that thing and I would swing and I would just drink. Sometimes I get on that tire swinging. I don't go in a lot of details about it, but it was freedom. And little as I know, my mother was watching me swing on that thing, you know. And she said I would swing so high. She thought the thing was going to break. And she would see me laughing and talking and up there. And she'd say, oh my God, what is wrong with my little girl? What is going on with her, you know? And then all of a sudden I get off and it seemed like I could breathe. And I would go in and I would be okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
But you know, it was a way for me because my mom said I was so smart. And you know, she didn't know what to do with me, you know, because she never really had a child that really, really smart, that was so adventurous and did well. And she was so saddened sometimes because she wished she could have did more for me, but she didn't have the money. Like I wanted to go to dance school, or I wanted to go to art school. I wanted to do, but she didn't have the money. But you know, I accepted it because I knew she didn't have the money. But as long as I had her love, that was good enough.
That's beautiful. And so now that I've kept you a full 90 minutes almost, if you wanted to sort of, I think maybe when we spoke informally in the coffee shop, I asked you about this, but what would you say the most important lesson that you've learned from this? I don't even know. Like it's such a rich, action-packed life of resiliency and so many tests and trials and tribulations you've had along the way. What would you say the most important lesson would be?
Truly, for me personally, um, instead of when someone say no to you, don't consider it a rejection. Look at it as an option, and you take control of that option. That's the important lesson I learned of all of this. No is just another option. It's up to me if I want to accept it.
That's beautiful. And if people want to follow you or stay in touch with you and your work, how would they find you?
Oh, I'm on Instagram. I'm
Follow
on
on
Instagram.
Instagram.
Follow on Instagram, Angela.Harrelson. On Instagram. You know, they can always find me at the square, at the George Floyd Square. But what I want the audience to know that what has happened to my nephew, you know, I felt their love and their support, and Lord knows I appreciate it. It is an unfortunate gift, is how I sum this up. Unfortunate that I lost Perry. His daughter lost her father. We lost a family member. The community lost someone that they were just getting to know. But the gift he left, well, what he left is his gift to use your voice.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for being with me today. And just a reminder, Angela's book is called Lift Your Voice, How My Nephew George Floyd's Murder Changed the World. And it's ghostwritten by Michael Levin along with you, Angela Harrelson. I hope everybody reads it. Everybody should.
Yeah, and thank you. Thank you you're wonderful. You're wonderful.
Likewise, I can't wait to see you again very soon.
See you soon.
All right, beautiful. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, Angela.
Bye-bye.